Hi everyone, thank you firstly to Andrea, Chile and Madrid. This is a beautiful city and my name is Holmes Páez and my partner here is Lisa Bornstein of McGill University. So let me introduce this ongoing project. It's so-called Reinforcing Bottom-Up Initiatives for Climate Change Adaptation in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the short title of this project is Adapt. This project is part of an effort of this group of persons. The principal researcher is Gonzalo Rizaralde, Benjamin Erazo, Daniel Lave from Universidad de Montréal, Lisa Bornstein here, Adriana Lopez from Colombia, Andres Olivera from Cuba, Hernanes Cuy, and Roberto from Chile. Um, so this project is funded by IDRC of Canada, and the university that you are watching on the screen is Universidad de Montréal, McGill, Concordia. This is a group of leader university of Canada. And we have other local university from Latin America and the Caribbean. Caribbean is the university is Universidad del Biobío, Universidad del Valle, Javeriana University is my university, Universidad de Haití, Marta Abreu from Cuba, and an NGO that is so-called Antioquia Present. So we have this objective. We are identifying adaptation strategy developed by local leaders in informal settings in two kind of cities, small and medium. And the specific objectives are the following: scale up to increase their impact, transfer between contexts to enhance innovation. So this research project is action research, and the last one is integrated into policy to guarantee sustained change. We have two paradoxes in our project. The first one is whereas informal settlements in the region are typically vulnerable to war-related risks and CCV, climate change and variability, they are also effective incubators of bottom-up, informally driven mechanisms of adaptation. And the other paradox is this following. These strategies are very often initiated and led by women who constitute a particular vulnerable group, so, but who played a crucial role in building the social fabric that made such adaptation possible. Our analytical framework is supported in four concepts. The first one is critical vulnerability, critical resiliency, social just governance mechanisms, and gender sensibility to climate change and variability. Uh, our main research question is what is the role of different stakeholders in disaster risk reduction in the face of CCB? Uh, and this is a map that represents the five case study that we have in the project. The one of them is located in Cuba, two in Colombia, in Sangar and Jumbo, and the last one is in Concepcion, Chile. What about the methodology in this project? We have four steps. The first one is just identified the best idea of creative solution developed in academia and with a focus in the best bottom-up initiatives. Then match them and access their impact in the community. So this slide represents the coordination between the local universities, external university, NGO, that is Antioquia Presente, and the research implementation that is our scope in the project. So, Lisa?
Thank you, Holmes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that's what we set out as a project. That's what the IDRC funded. We're now a year and a half 2 years into the project, and so we've learned some things. So I'm going to draw out 4 different lessons. I think they resonate very well with what's already been said during the day today. So I'll be echoing some comments, but then I think I'll be adding some new ones that's learning that's coming out of our network. And I think we're somewhat unique amongst the IDRC funded projects in Latin America in that we have multiple action projects underway on the ground. So universities in each of the different countries where we're working are engaging with community members around the practices that they are implementing to address climate change and climate change justice related issues. So I'm just gonna, there are 4 different things that have to do with how our projects contribute to building capacity and what we've learned so far. So first, it's very, very common to say there's no planet B, but there are many plan Bs. And what we set out to do was to say, okay, how can these action projects improve conditions on the ground? And definitely that's one of the things that's happening. And a second concern was to make sure that learning was taking place so that out of these action projects, we would be identifying good practices, if not best practices, that could then be scaled up. And that indeed is one of the things that's happening. But I think what we had not anticipated is how much some of our projects have led to a general plan B. And the best example that I can provide is what's going on in Chile right now, where we've had projects underway for the last 2 years that engage in a very, very different way with local communities around building capacity to deal with flooding, and that have incorporated indigenous peoples in a meaningful, inclusive manner, that have had ongoing engagement, that have listened to the stories about people's daily lives and have built upon it. And now national attention is coming to these projects as a new way of moving forward during this period of major structural political change in the country. So sometimes it's not just the kind of scaling up that we've traditionally built into our project designs, but it's something about almost the redundancy and the openings and the ideas about overall resiliency, where we're saying we can do something different on a pilot basis that, if the openings emerge, can then be scaled up, structurally incorporated in policies, practices, and overall legislation. They're doing a new constitution. So that would be the first major point. The second is that we started off with a project thinking, oh, there's lots of innovative measures that are being done by women in the ground in their communities. And that is absolutely the case. But we're also finding that sometimes good practices aren't just sitting there waiting to be found. They actually have to be co-constructed together with institutions that have more scope for action and room for maneuver. And universities often have that extra space to be able to act. They've got more money, they've got expertise, they've got a role, as in Bangladesh, to train and to build capacity. They've also got sometimes more political space. They've got legitimacy or political ties that allow them a space to allow people to solve problems. And so that kind of co-production, as with the German stories and the Guatemalan stories, is something that we're seeing all the time. And while the involvement of universities in these kinds of partnerships do bring up all sorts of questions around power imbalances, they also may contribute to longer-term capacity building and an ability to share innovations across different regions. The third of my 4 points is that framing. We have been fundamentally challenged in our work on the ground by different ways of framing the issue. We co-wrote our proposal with our Latin American and Caribbean partners around resiliency and around climate change adaptation. That's not the story we're hearing from people on the ground. Those words have no resonance in their daily lives. What matters are questions of inclusion, social justice, livelihoods, the challenges of everyday life. So if we really want to deal with some of these larger climate change adaptation issues, they have to be tied in to projects that seriously address the justice issues, the inclusion issues. So that's something that's made us really listen, reframe, think about the discourse and the narratives around our adaptation and project planning measures. And the fourth point is one that many others have made. We've been trying to link project problems, place-based solutions. We've been doing lots of field courses, short, long, multi-year to 1 week, that bring together people from disciplines that are quite different, from countries that are very different, as a way of making climate change impacts real and co-constructing solutions. But the network building is the other side of that, and everyone has said that, and we just have to echo that that's been one of the most important learning areas and arenas that we've had so far, is building and strengthening the ability to collaborate. And I'll just close by saying that this whole process has been really demanding. So it's time intensive, it's respect intensive. So being able to really engage on as equals, with respect, with patience, with humility, with adaptability, with commitment, all of those have been both a source of pleasure and a challenge. Thank you.